I was already grieving.
Mm.
I was already grieving someone who was dying but was still living.
Wow.
And I know 100% that had everything to do with why I wasn't able to be there like
Mm-hmm.
I know I should have been,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know how to handle the fact that the woman who had been with me all of my life was at some point not going to be there anymore. And it pained me to watch her become a figment of herself every time that I saw her.
Oh, wow.
And I did not know how to handle that. Hello, and welcome to the Powder Room, where we discover the message within our messes. I am your host, Ivy Ashley. Well. Hey, Powder Room family. Listen, I am going to start off by saying I am equal parts excited and nervous about today's episode because it is one that hits very hard for me today. And unfortunately, it is one of those topics that nobody wants to discuss until life forces it. So today's episode is titled Caregiving and Aging Parents When Love Becomes Responsibility. And I know, we uh tend to want to push things under the rug, but I promise you, this is a discussion that you want to have with those who you love. And I'm more excited today because I get to have a conversation with someone who is very near and dear to me, my big sister, Terry Slaughter, because she was the primary caregiver for our mother before she passed away. So go ahead, get your notes, get your pen, your phone, whatever you use, because I think there will be some very good information that we are going to share today. You also may want to have a little tissue on hand. As you see, I have come prepared for whatever happens. So, with that in mind, I want to welcome to the Powder Room for the very first time my sister, my bleed, Terry Slaughter, Doc and Lovely. How you doing?
Hey, hello. I'm doing great. I'm great. I'm so glad to be here, Ivy. I really am.
Yeah.
All is well.
And I am so happy that you said yes when I asked you.
Of course.
Also, I want to share something that you do not know, that this is the 50th episode of the Powder Room.
Oh, hey, hey, that's awesome. Awesome.
We made it to 50 episodes, and it
Wow.
so
Congratulations.
awesome that I
It
get to
is.
share this milestone with my sister. I could not have planned this
Oh,
any better. Girl, it's too early for you to get choked up.
well, I know. Thank you. What an honor. I hadn't realized you had there that many sessions. I'm a little behind,
That's
but I'm so godly proud of you, and thank you. This is quite an honor.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're
Like I
welcome.
said, I could not have dreamed of sharing this moment with anyone else but my
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, like I said in my introduction, we
Mhm.
are talking about caregiving and aging parents. And my sister was the primary caregiver of our mom, S.C. Ford, and we are going to dedicate this episode to her as well. And we just want to give you a little insight on our experience, and hopefully it will generate some conversation that you need to have with your own family members. So let's go ahead and get into this discussion. So, sis,
Yes.
I'd like for us to start just telling the people a little bit about mom and who she was.
Oh, wow. Mom, Essie May Hayes Ford. Mom had nursed for about 42 years, and then she was in retirement. And in her retirement, mom would do so much for everybody. Well, she always had been that way, but she volunteered. As you know, I'm a school teacher, elementary school teacher at the time, and she would volunteer a couple of days a week at my schools. One particular school, Biscayne Elementary, where I was working, they became so excited for her to be there because she would always bring something to eat. Where's your mom? She's bringing banana pudding this week, or she's gonna make some of that rice and chicken wings she used to make, and so she was a very important part of two of the schools where I worked. And mom walked. She used to walk a mile or so in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Mom was a caregiver for others, friends, and family.
Yeah.
She volunteered with the I don't know, a division of hospice where you go in and allow the caregivers to go and do their grocery shopping, and she sat with the patient. So mom has always been a giver.
Absolutely. Just to add to that, she was definitely vibrant,
Definitely so.
independent, top chef before it even came on TV.
But
She loved to cook, loved to serve people. I
that's
mean, as
right.
you said, she definitely was a caregiver. Anytime there was a need, anytime, there was a question, people always, went to her. And like you said, I remember that, she would do her walking and she said, "Oh, I feel like my hips getting a little big." And and then you will find her getting up, early in the morning and going for her walk. She was told she definitely
Mhm.
was a staple, in our family, and everybody loved Auntie Essie.
That's correct. One thing I would like to also add is,
Hmm.
which was such a blessing to me, was she would come out to the schools and pray before the school year began. And there was a school in her not far from her in the neighborhood. I didn't even know she had done this, and she would walk around the school. Met some women at this high school, and she told me she met the principal, and he said invited her and her friends to come back anytime to walk around that school prior to the school year beginning. So, that will always stay with me.
Absolutely. How could I forget? Because the
Mm.
apple definitely doesn't fall far from the tree, because both
Yeah.
you and I are prayer
Yeah.
warriors and we
Yes,
get it
ma'am.
honestly. And it actually
Yeah.
started from Grandmama Sarah Hayes.
That's right.
She was the ultimate prayer warrior. I can remember her being in that living room chair.
Rocking. Calling on Jesus. Yes, ma'am.
Hands folded together like this, rubbing.
Yes,
Some
ma'am.
oil was stirring when you see them hands going
Hands
together.
rubbing together. Yes, ma'am. I find myself doing that sometimes too.
Yes,
Yeah. So it definitely is in our DNA, right?
absolutely. So we can sit here and talk about mom all day long, but I really want to get into, when did you first notice that something wasn't right as it relates to mom's health?
Um, when I really, really knew that something wasn't right
Mhm.
was after her knee replacement surgery. And I felt like the healing process wasn't taking place as rapid as it should have taken place.
Yes.
Um, and when she would attempt to, in her rehabilitation stage, it seems like she was weaker than what the doctors said that she should be. And I just kind of applied it to her being stagnant for a while she was recuperating. I call a little lazy, expecting, when you're down and you've been weighted on hand and foot. I kind of thought some of that was going on, enjoying being catered to because she had catered to so many for so long, right?
Right.
And I kind of thought it was that at one point, but then there was one evening she came in from dinner with Auntie Betty, and Uncle Frank, and I was assisting him with bringing her into my house, and she was on a walker, and she kind of got really, really weak and went down. I'm like, okay, this is not normal. So that was what was in the back of my mind from that time, and that's when I realized, okay, something's wrong.
Okay, so when we received the ALS diagnosis, what were your first thoughts? And did you know anything about ALS?
Okay, I'll answer the question on the opposite way you gave it.
Okay.
Yes, I knew about ALS because of the ALS bucket challenge some years prior, the
Okay.
ice bucket challenge,
Yeah.
and I thought that was the craziest thing that I saw on social media. And then when they labeled it ALS, when I read about it, I knew it as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Right.
I didn't know it as ALS, and I knew about the new Lou Gehrig's disease because of a celebrity that had been diagnosed with it. I can't call the man's name some years prior. Not Lou Gehrig because he's a baseball player, but
Right.
and then so that's what I knew about it. I knew that it attacked the body. I knew that persons eventually are wheelchair bound and that their muscles were attacked. But I had no idea as far as all the symptoms, early symptoms, nor the lifespan, expectation. I didn't know any of that. So
Okay.
when I entered the room the day that mom had her appointment for the neurologist, I was to meet her there, and by the time I arrived, that they'd already done the testing,
Mm.
and I recall seeing little speckles of blood on the examining bed. I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And the doctor said, "Don't be alarmed. We had to prick her in the back to test some things." And then mom looked at me, and I could see she had been crying. And I said, "Mama," and then she said, "Your mama have ALS," in her little gentle way. I said, "What?" Your mom has ALS. That's what they say. And I looked at the doctor. I said, Lou Gehrig's, and he said, yes. I said, wow. And at that moment, my chest got really tight. But I said to myself, I have got to let this moment be about her being okay and not about me. So I swallowed hard. I didn't allow her to see my tears or anything of that nature. But
Yeah.
it was I think you were on the phone that day, right? Didn't she call you on the telephone? Okay.
Yes.
So those were my initial thoughts at that very moment.
Yes. And I will add that I was in shock and denial
Mm.
at the same time. And I can specifically remember when the doctor said it. I said, "So are you sure or are you practicing medicine?"
Oh, wow. I remember y'all sharing that with you, Ben.
I did. And I was like, and he explained to me, he was like, well, honestly, there's really no way to be sure. And there's no test, no one test that we give that says, yes, this is Lou Gehrig's disease. We do a myriad of tests. And based on the results of everything that we've done, the conclusion is that's what it is.
Yeah, that wasn't my expectation. I mean, that was the farthest thing from my mind because
Yeah.
at the rehab facility where she was living at that time, receiving therapy, they thought it was spondylosis,
Okay.
spondylosis, which has its own issues. Um, so more really and truly, I was expecting that diagnosis to be confirmed. They couldn't confirm it at the facility, but the physical therapist and the doctor and the nurse said that's what the symptoms look like to them. So ALS was the farthest thing from my mind. That just changed everything altogether.
Yeah. And I think once, and I think I was actually driving from work, as I was having this conversation, and when I got home, I was a straight
Great.
mess. I was a straight mess. I mean, I didn't
Wow.
know, what to do,
Mhm.
with that information. So now we have, this diagnosis, and it was sometime, and we'll may get into that at some point,
Mhm.
before mom completely lost her mobility as far as being able to walk with a walker. So tell us about the time that you realized that you were going to be the primary caregiver.
Okay, I wanna go back and add one more thing if I may.
Absolutely.
Mom, transportation brought mom to her appointment, transportation from the facility, and I drove. So I called our brother Howard on the way to the facility to inform him. And that's when I allowed my emotions to I experienced some tears and emotions, but I want to make sure that I was present for her, not let her be concerned about me.
Right.
So we got to the facility. When they got there, of course I got there before they did. Got her in the room and talked to her a little bit, and she just said that she'll be all right, but I know she wasn't, but that's mom, you know.
Right.
So that's how that went. But okay. So then what was your next question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I knew you was gonna do that. So at what point did you realize that you were going to be the
Oh,
primary caregiver?
ooh, that's a good one. Um Mom had spent some time at our brother Howard's house, a couple of weeks maybe, when after one of her hospital visits, and it was determined it wasn't even ALS diagnosed as of yet, but she was having symptoms and we didn't know it. And it was determined that she needed to, have some care until she's able to, regain strength.
Right.
But after she left his home, after a couple of weeks, she wanted to go back to her house. And I did. And I had a difficult time finding people to assist me in that process as I was still working. She was still a little bit independent. She would, wheel into the kitchen to do a few things. But it was very obvious that she needed some type of care. So within the next 4, 5, maybe 6 months of seeing how difficult it would be. I mean, people made promises, but people get tired after a while. Um, so after asking my brother to help me one weekend for the first time, I said, "Hey, because I was working a full-time job and an evening job, and I asked for some help, but he wasn't able for whatever reason to share the load that I needed at the time. Not a 24 hours, just a few hours. And then I had a conversation with you, and I never forget this conversation when
Mm.
when we realized that things were going to be she's going to pretty much need some care most of the
Yeah.
time. And I think you were planning within that year to move to Charlotte, and you asked, do you think I need to come home? And my initial thought was, why is she asking me that? This is her mother too. And I said, it's not my responsibility. I'm thinking, I said, it's not my responsibility to tell her what to do. And I said, well, in pretty much, I can't remember what I said verbatim, but I know pretty much that, well, I'm handling, I'm going to handle it, or I got it, or, uh, I forget exactly how I responded, but I just know that I was just really, upset about being asked if you needed to come home. Yeah, so and that's when I realized that this is gonna be mostly on me to plan, execute, everything that's gonna be pertaining to mom's care.
Yeah. I don't even remember that conversation, to be honest with you,
Oh,
about
wow, you don't?
asking. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Because I called my friend, my prayer partner, Valerie, and cried on her shoulders about it, not that same day, but after I tried to process, through it. Because I didn't, I know I was the eldest. Um, I know that I've been married and had children, and I was pretty much content being here in Jacksonville at the time. I didn't have a reason to leave, uh, and I knew that, you were a little more adventurous and had more aspirations. Never wanted to be a person who would say anything or do anything that would hinder any of that. So I wanted to process it to make sure that I wasn't being, what that my feelings were valid,
Yeah.
what I was going through, because I was already being affected emotionally and physically. I mean, my lifestyle had changed, appointments and everything that mom need I had to do unless I
Yeah.
asked my cousin Lisa or Dale to help out. But however, so once I cried on my friend's shoulders, honey, and kind of prayed and called y'all everything but a child and of God, I my brother and my sister, I love them, but I got to do what I got to do. So I realized and I accepted it. Now I was a little teed a little bit, but
Yeah. I don't want to get too far ahead, because we're
Mhm,
gonna get into the section about family support.
mhm.
We'll dive into more, so I'm gonna add my commentary. Then I'll hold it.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit more about caregiving and the responsibilities that surround that, because I think sometimes, especially if you've never been around it, you have
Mhm,
absolutely no idea of the responsibility and what it entails. So I really want to give, the Powder Room family a glimpse of what a day in your life look like, in the beginning and then later stages as it
right.
relates to,
Yeah,
caregiving? What are
right.
some of the responsibilities
Really.
that people don't see or think about as it relates to caring for, whether it's an aging parent or a loved one who needs, caregiving for a
Mm,
time period?
okay. I would say, I often share that, liken my experience as a caregiver as if I was a parent with a baby, toddler, or a young child in my home,
Mm.
because you have to do everything that you do for yourself for that little person. I mean,
Right.
every single thing. Wash clothes, prepare meals, doctor's appointments, making sure beds change. Mom got to the point where she had to have, bed changing and diapers changed and so on and so forth. Conversating with doctors and nutritionists and making sure the diet is appropriate, arranging home health care, having several people in and out your home. So it's just a lot of things. Transportation, equipment, making sure it's ordered and arrived and checking it out before the person leaves and, calling the insurance company. Uh, so there's so many more things. Transportation once we could no longer I could no longer lift the wheelchair, so having, public transportation, having that set up, making sure she's qualified, having my name added to her bank account and things, things that I need to have access to. Um, and for her particular case, I was aware of the symptoms and what could possibly happen, and
Yeah.
more importantly, the frontal lobe part of the disease, where critical thinking and reasoning would be compromised.
Yes.
So some of those things, power of attorney, I didn't think about that at first, but the medical and the durable, the power of attorney, I had attorneys that come to the house to do that. So it's a lot of little pieces. Um, uh, a lot of pieces, a lot of moving pieces. That just to name some of them.
So how did mom, handle all of this transition? Because we had already talked about, how independent she was and how accustomed she was to, doing everything herself. How difficult was it for her to relinquish, some of her independence?
Once the disease really began to manifest, weakening the muscles and so on and so forth. I would, excuse me, I would speak to the doctors, at the appointments, I would ask the questions of all the doctors. She had like 12 people on her team. For every organ or every system in her body, there was a doctor, a medical professional that we would see at Mayo. And on her visits, each of them would come in. And so I would ask different ones what to do for this, that, and the other. And they always would say, let her be as independent as she could be, as long as she can be.
Right.
And she wanted to so much be independent, so much to be independent. She was Mama was very understanding. There are times that she did not want to relinquish or control, but she was very understanding. She wasn't a difficult patient at all. I have to say that Mom was not difficult at all. And I think that comes from her being a caregiver herself as a nurse for so many years. I really think that caused her to understand. Now the roles are changing. We had a couple of headbutting experiences, but nothing that I could really truly complain about because she's did a wonderful job. And then she did tell me one day that I know that you're trying to do the best for me. Sometimes it was just a way that I would say it or ask for it, in my frustration, not with her so much, but coming home from dealing with, people and children all day. I just did not censor my tone sometimes. And so, we had that conversation that I could realize that I could say some things a little differently. And but she did it. I I don't have any complaints at how she made that transition. I know it wasn't one she wanted to do,
Right.
but she wasn't a problem with it.
Yeah. She just in general was not a complainer.
Mhm.
Even
Exactly.
when, she didn't feel well, you didn't hear her complain a lot of the time. The only time I knew, like, for certain when Mom was in pain is when she had what was that with the blisters?
Shingles.
When she had shingles,
Yeah.
I knew she was in pain because she was in tears
Yes.
that, she was hurting so bad and that I knew that something is not right. And I think Howard ended up taking her to the emergency room and come to find out that the doctor hadn't prescribed enough medication for her.
Right.
And the doctor was, angry, like, no wonder she's in pain. So, that was probably the one and only instance that I can really think of out of everything that she had ever been through. And she wasn't a sickly person
Not at
at
all.
all. I think maybe high blood pressure.
Yeah, that's all she took. She took
Yeah.
cholesterol at a period of time, but she wasn't on cholesterol anymore, just the blood
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah. She had high blood pressure, which I believe she pretty much, was able to,
It was,
maintain
yeah,
or
very well.
control very well. So she wasn't a sickly person at all. So this, ALS was like a huge hit, not
Yeah.
only to her physical being, but also to her mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I believe that she felt a whole lot more than what she ever verbalized to any of us.
I
And
agree.
for and I hate that. I hate that, she died holding on to a
Mine too.
whole lot of stuff that I wish she would have been able, to be free of.
Right. I agree with you on that. I remember one night, when she had the shingles, um, I would stay at her house with her sometimes, and the first time I heard her cry out like that, she never cried out like that in my presence in regards to the ALS, but the shingles was so painful, and she really prayed and said, she said, "I could die because she's hurting that bad." She was
Mm.
hurt that bad, and that's the next day when she went to the hospital with Howard the next day. Um, yeah. Mom and I, as time progressed, Mom and I had some really good conversations. about life, because I did share that very same thing with her that you mentioned, Ivy, that she's held on to hold so many things that, in her life. I told her there were a lot of things I don't know about your life, and you never shared them. I said, it's okay. I said, and if you were ever angry with your parents about something, that's life. I mean, we talked about it. So there are some things she did relinquish a little. I wish there was much more
Yeah.
that that been freed from. But I have to say that, that was a great one particular night. We sat in my home and talked and laughed and cried. And I really cried until she shared some things and got them up and out. I remember telling her mom, that doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah.
Don't take anything away. You feel how you feel and it's okay. I said, it's okay, but I want you to get it out. I said, I never want you or anybody to die and go to heaven and not be free from things. She said, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. I said, okay, you're better now. Free. She said that made that little face, but
Well, maybe you'll share a few of those things with me, in private, if you feel led to at some point in our lives. But I will share this. I can remember when she was on her deathbed, and I did not know it. At the time, it was that night before, and I shared with you that she was just so restless.
Right.
During that night, she would not sleep. And at one moment, had to be like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, she asked me, she said that, do you think Howard and Terry will forgive me? And I was like, huh? I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? And she was like, for what I put them through with Forrest. And she, just to give my listeners context, Forrest was my brother's father and they were married. And he was physically and verbally abusive to her. And she, for some reason, at that time, just had an awakening of the possible impact that could have had on her middle and oldest child. And so she was like, do you think, they will forgive me for putting them in that situation? I was like, Mom, I promise you they're not holding that against you. But I think that I've heard, in cases when someone or they sense they're about to pass, that they start having these confessionals and certain things start coming up and out. And just want to tell, when was that? In the late 60s? Early 70s?
No, when he did those things to us, that was in the 60s. I was present, and that's one of the things that we talked about that night, Mom and I. That's why I'm kind of smiling that she even mentioned that to you. We talked about that. She apologized for me having to see so much and go through so much with him and her marriage, and because he was physically abusive to me as well.
I didn't know that.
Well, not on a regular basis, but one particular night they were at it and he hit me because I was trying to help her. And my lip would burst, and that's when his grandmother shot him. And so, but anyway, she and I talked about that, and she asked me how I felt, and we talked about it. So, so that's something I can give you some more detail about later on.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, my sister kind of glazed over that, but you heard right that his grandmother shot him for.
That's right. Pow, pow, baby. Yeah. She came out.
Well, she was my mama and my sister, so thank Granny. I wasn't there at the time, but Grandma did not play.
That's right, baby. That's right. That's right. She did not. Grandma Harris did not play. Granny Harris. She sure did not.
Yes. So, she did, was able to, release some things. And so, yeah, I'd be excited for us to have that one-on-one conversation. So, wrapping up this little piece on caregiving that we're talking about, how did it impact your personal life as far as like your work, your relationships, just what was the impact for you?
Yeah. The impact for me, I was tired. I didn't have the capacity to do much but work and come home and do the things I need to do for myself and for mom. Work was affected greatly, which I didn't realize it because my principal pulled me to the side one day and said that, she had, wanted to talk to me. I know your mom, you're a caregiver for your mom, and I know you're probably tired sometimes, but I've gotten a couple complaints about your tone that you might be a little rough with the children than normal. And you might want to consider putting her in a nursing home. I said, we don't do that. She's Caucasian. I said,
Mhm.
we don't do that. I said, we take care of our people at home as long as we can. And I said, but thank you for the concern. I said, as far as me being a little rough with people, I'll thank you for bringing that to my attention and I'll deal with that. Now, on my drive home, I wept a little bit because I didn't ever want, to mistreat anybody intentionally or
Yeah.
accidentally. And, I just had to make sure, because I was elementary school at times. So I just had to make sure that, I was always firm and stern in my voice and tone with my students. But, somehow someone thought that I was doing a little more. That could have been a truth, could not have been a truth, but I accepted that criticism. She wasn't angry when she shared it with me. My principal was not. So I accepted that criticism and I did the best that I could, but I know that I was just tired. I had when I could, I would secure mama when I really needed to get away. I would secure her for the evening. I would go and to a Lord Family or happy hour to go to for a little bit, or go to a movie, or just find a friend to spend some time with. But it wasn't often. But mom and I enjoyed the evenings that I would get in bed with mom and watch TV. We had some fun times watching television and that type thing. The nights that I slept with her in her bed, when she was still at her house, when I was going over there to caregive for her. So I just made the best of the situation. I enjoyed bringing home food in the evening. That I know she's never been to this restaurant, and I would go by and pick up some stuff. And she said, "Oh, it's too late to eat." I said, "Uh-uh." And as soon as I brought her a fork, honey, it was no longer too late to eat because she would, "Ooh, child, this is some good meatloaf. Where'd you get this from?" So that was our treat. On Saturday nights, I would stop by a restaurant, a different place, and she and I would enjoy a little more so here and there. So I made the best of it. And when I could get away for a weekend or something, I don't recall at the moment me going where I went, but I believe I did go to, I don't know if it was Tallahassee, but I was able to do something. Someone came in and gave me some time. So
Mm.
you do what you can, but as far as, how it affects you, I mean, mom, not only being her caregiver, being her daughter, I was depressed. I didn't realize I was depressed until I had to talk to someone. I didn't realize I was depressed because I was on go all the time. So I didn't realize how depressed I was. And I was eating too much and gaining weight. And that should have been my biggest telltale sign.
Mhm.
The other effect was, physically, because my blood pressure stayed up. Um, uh, Indigestion became worse, which I didn't know stress contributed. My primary doctor, stress contributed to all this, and she had told me, she was mom primary care doctor too, Miss Williams, Dr. Williams, and she wanted to put me on some medication, and I said, I don't need that stuff. I'm not crazy. She said, no, it's not about that. She said, you're dealing with a disease that's going to change your mom's life, and it's going to progressively get worse, and it's going to be rough. She
Mhm.
said, so you just do this. You don't have to be on it for long. And I guess she can hear just talking to me because she would ask me questions. And I guess from talking to me, she said, this girl needs some medication. I was in denial. So it took me about a month or two before I even start taking the medication
Mhm.
to help me. I didn't realize I was depressed. I didn't realize that I had anxiety. She called it out. And I, sought some therapy. So all of that. And then, of course, like I said, the physical things that were going on, gaining the weight, reflux, acid reflux, to the point where my esophagus was a bit eroded. And that's why I had to have that surgery in 2018. So a lot of things took place and I really wasn't aware of it.
Wow. Okay, let's stay there for a minute because we're like in the crux. I can't
Mhm.
think of the right word, but
That's all right.
that's one of them
The
black
things, some
people
things,
words.
yeah, that we make up, but we understand what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We're in the thick of things,
The thick of
right
it, yeah.
now with
Mhm.
ALS. And so let's talk a little bit about watching mom decline.
Mhm.
That's one thing about, ALS. And if you don't know, powder room family it is a progression. Things slowly or it can be rapid, but mom's disease progress slowly. Um, that from what the doctor said, it's still slow moving. Um, but I think the changes that I noticed were quite different from what you noticed because you were there with her every day. So I had somewhat of a different, perspective because I remember certain times, and I can't remember something specific that you pointed out that I didn't really realize it because, I hadn't been with her as often as you had.
Mhm.
So as it relates to mom's decline, can you think of a particular moment where you notice that something that you notice that she's declining and that moment kind of broke you?
Um, Aside from seeing her, go down when she couldn't weight bear on her non-operative leg, it was um, the inability to make decent decisions. I won't say decent, realistic decisions. I had found out that mom was writing checks for my cousin to cash for her to give money to other people. I was very upset about that.
Mhm.
Uh, that I, I didn't, I mean, I couldn't see her brain inside, but her actions let me know. I mean, mom was always a giver. We know that, right? When you're
Yeah.
given to the point where it's depleting your account, that didn't make sense to me. And then people would, I call it
Yes.
dry beg. And she had a caregiver that was dry begging, so that I found out a month or two later that mom had used her credit card to have the woman's car repaired. I was so upset with that to the point where I fired her.
Yeah.
I told her I could have her arrested for that because that's elder abuse.
Yes.
So that was and then the next thing was that really brought me to tears. I was very upset about that. That didn't bring me to tears. I was very angry about it. Then I got on to mom, and then what I realized when I tried to explain it to her, she didn't understand it. And I remember what the doctor told me, and I began to pull out the pamphlets, the literature that he had given me, and it talked about their frontal lobe, that degeneration of their frontal lobe, where you kind of regress almost as if you were a preteen, where your brain was not developed enough for you to make decent decisions,
Ah.
realistic decisions. And that also, the other thing I was going to say, when mom lost the ability to bathe herself. We would give her sometime a bed bath, and she would always do as much as she could do. And
Yeah.
when she lost the strength, she tried to bathe herself, but her arm would just give away because she didn't have the muscle tone and the strength to hold the washcloth to rub over her body. I remember praying one morning on the prayer line when my turn came to pray, and I remember hearing myself later on saying, thanking God for having to being able to brush my own teeth, wash my own face, comb
Yeah.
my hair, bathe myself, put my own food in my mouth. You understand? Take my own
Yes.
meal, put on my own clothes, because these were the things that she could no longer do.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted because we've been doing that since we've been able to walk and talk. But
Exactly.
those are the things when I saw her, that was the first time that I became very emotional when she could not do that thing for herself.
Yeah. And that's something you really don't think about because
Mhm.
unfortunately, none of us have a say and what will eventually happen to us. But what I will say, that none of us think that we are going to be at a point where we can't bathe ourselves,
Right, right.
or,
Exactly.
where we would have to wear a diaper and have another adult person, let alone your children,
To change.
have to wipe your behind,
Mhm.
and how humiliating that could be, that you can't even care for your own private parts.
Yeah.
We don't think about that. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Terry. When I had to do that for mom,
For the first
I
time.
I didn't mind it one bit. That's not what I'm saying. But I said, God, please, later on, probably even after she passed away, and I kind of thought about some things. Lord, please don't let that happen to me ever. If it gets to the point where someone has to take care of me in that way, or me dying, God, take my breath. I don't want anybody
Yeah,
to have to care for me to that degree.
I understand.
And I have thought about that, because honestly, who do I have
Exactly.
that would even be able to do that?
Yeah, we think
You know?
about those things.
Yeah.
I've thought about the very same things. That's why I've been so adamant with my family about their 5 wishes, living wills, DNRs, things of that nature, because those things are important, very much important.
Yeah, and it takes a situation, like this, and having to experience it. And I don't care how much TV you watch, how much, somebody else's story you may have been touched by. A lot of these things really don't come to play until you are face to face with it and have to make, some of those decisions on behalf of someone else yourself. It doesn't become personal until it happens to you. And that is the main reason why I wanted to do this episode, because unfortunately, we as Black people, we don't think about these things, especially when it comes to our mortality. We don't want to have those conversations about dying. And I'm telling you, my heart kind of heavy talking about it right
Yeah.
now, but I'm 51, not 15.
Right.
And so
Right.
I don't have a choice but to face, the possibility. Lord, I love you and I want to go to heaven, but I ain't homesick.
Right. Right. Right.
I ain't
Now I'm homesick.
homesick,
Yeah.
so I ain't trying to go yet.
Not yet, huh?
I'm just saying, these conversations are so
Needed.
important, and they are necessary.
Yeah, and needed.
They're
They're
definitely
necessary. Yeah.
necessary.
Mhm.
So, since we're already here, let me go
Yeah.
ahead and rip the Band-Aid off.
Go ahead.
And I want to talk about family dynamics.
Okay.
First place I want to go, and we are going to be honest.
For sure. For sure.
And we are beyond, the place of hurt feelings, because we've had conversations, and I'm probably gonna have some more right now. But let's talk about family relationships and how caregiving shifted your relationships with your family.
Are we talking about now or at that time? Back
At that time, and we can talk about now, the current later.
Well, for me, I have my sister and my brother, you and Howard. Then I have my extended family, Lisa, my cousin, Dale, my cousin. They're like sisters and brothers because we raised together. And then my Aunt Angela at the time, that's who
Mhm.
I had as far as my circle of people that I could depend on. Of course, my son Keenan and my daughter Terica, but Terica was in college at first, and then she was home the last couple of years of mom's life. Um, but my relationship, I'll start with my daughter. My relationship with Terica became even closer because she made several sacrifices.
Yeah.
To come home on the weekend to help out. She noticed, she said she would tell me, Mama, come home this weekend to give you a break from Granny. And I so appreciated that. And one particular time she came home, she brought her boyfriend, which is now her husband, home with her to help with my mom. And he had previous health care training while in high school. So he was well prepared with the potty chair and the Hoyer lift and things that we had at home to help move mom around. So I felt like that drew Tarek and I closer because it showed me, for one, the wonderful young lady that she was raised to be, caregiving.
Mhm.
She loved her grandmother dearly,
Yeah.
and she wanted to spend as much time with her, and she didn't mind making that sacrifice.
Mhm.
Um, my relationship with Ivy, with you, the o- I I don't know whether there was a shift. Was there a shift? Or I guess for me, I was disappointed.
Yes.
It didn't cause me to love or like you less. I just was very disappointed. And I was hurt. Um, but I remember that I wanted to make sure that I kept you abreast on everything that was going on with her, and I tried my best to keep you informed um, about her uh, progress or lack of. And I did appreciate how you made your bestie Keisha available to help out. Bringing food and, whatever I could call and, her schedule could match, and then she would do whatever I could what she was able to do. I as I'm thinking, I don't think it really shifted. And if I'm overlooking it, didn't notice it, or you can, give me your insight, but I don't think it shifted if it shifted, it shifted for the better, but I just can't recall right now. We might have become closer. We might have become a little closer during that time. I just can't
Yeah.
think of anything that was problematic. I'll say it that way. Only other than what I've already mentioned. My brother Howard, and I expected more from him because he was here in town. And my girlfriend said that I should not. She told me that I should have the same expectations for him for you that I have for him. And she thought I was wrong for that, for not expecting. She said, well, yeah, well, that's how she felt, and how she explained to me. So I began to think about that. But right now, dealing with Howard, I expected a little more. So that shifted our relationship. His relationship and my relationship on my end, it kind of put a wedge between us because at
Yeah.
one time we had a heated argument when I made a decision to move mom from her house to my house because I was exhausted trying to maintain two houses. I was back and forth, and I wanted to sleep in my bed because I was having back problems. My back issues were exacerbated because of, the wheelchair that she had prior, with me lifting it in and out the car. And so I needed a better sleeping mattress. And my mattress at my house was better on my bed than the one I had at mom's house. And the decision was made, and then mom needed full 24-hour care. I needed
Mhm.
someone to care for her at night so that I could come home and from work and not come right to work with her, then being exhausted, coming home, then waking up in the morning, not rested. So mom made that decision to move her to my home. And so that caused a great argument between he and I, very heated. I've never had a heated argument with my brother that brought me to tears. And so
Mhm.
my respect for him lowered I just didn't see him in the same. I saw him as being very selfish and only thinking about him and the people that lived in his home. Now, as I spoke with my friend Valerie, she did say, well, she brought some things to my attention. She said, well, if that's the case, then Ivy should, give more time. And once I thought about it, it took me a while.
Yeah.
You and I always had a different relationship than Howard and I. You're female. You were my girl. I was your other mama when you were coming up. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
was your big sister. You were my bleed. And so thinking about that, I was angry and disappointed, but
Yeah.
I don't think I treated you any differently. My love for you was still there. I don't feel like it put a wedge between us or anything because we did communicate on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course my son Keenan, he was available at first. I mean, at first he wasn't. He was dealing with his own demons. I was disappointed with him. He was supposed to help out and he fell through because he wouldn't wake up in time to do what he needed to do for my mom. She begged me to let him come stay there to help out because that's her one and only grandson. And I had previously put him out of my house, and he was disappointing as well because he didn't keep up his end of the bargain. So once again, I think you came in and you said that Negro had to go because he wasn't doing what he had to do. So that put a really strain on my relationship. He and I, he was very angry with us all, me and him. So he kind of distanced himself from myself and the rest, you and Terica, during that time.
Yeah.
Lisa, my cousin Lisa and Dale, our cousins, they were there, and I really appreciate them and our relationship. My relationship with Lisa and Dale became closer, and then Auntie Angela, initially, she and I became a little closer, but then there was a wedge placed because she didn't agree with how I was running things.
Okay. Yeah, it was a tough time. And I know that you and I have already had this conversation, but I'm going to share it with the Powder Room family. And honestly, I did not realize that's where I was until everything was done. And I sought some counseling for myself and had some reflective moments
Mhm.
during that period at the height of mom's illness, where I was realizing, her decline. I was already grieving.
Mm.
I was already grieving someone who was dying but was still living.
Feel wow.
And I know 100% that had everything to do with why I wasn't able to be there like
Mhm,
I know I should have
mhm,
been,
mhm,
because I didn't know how to handle the fact that the woman who had been with me all of my life was at some point not going to be there anymore. And it
mhm.
pained me to watch her become a figment of herself every time that I saw her.
Oh, wow.
And I did not know how to handle that. I had no clue. And it was easier for me not to be there than to watch it happen before my eyes.
Wow. I never knew that.
I didn't realize it at the time.
Ah.
And I knew that you were hurting, but I didn't know how to manage my own hurt.
Mhm. Wow. That's
And I
good.
think, that's something that, we definitely have to talk about, because yes, you want to be support for your family member 100%. Nobody would ever question whether or not I love my mama.
Mhm.
But loves look different. Love looks different when it becomes responsibility, as the title of this episode is called.
Mm. Okay. Okay. You know what? Thank you for sharing that. I never knew that. point, that your viewpoint, and what you experienced. And I don't even believe I didn't even grieve until COVID kicked in.
Mm.
That's when I began to grieve. Remember, as a school teacher, Mama passed the end of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
COVID was just coming up. She the one told me about COVID when I came back from New York after Thanksgiving in that November of the 2019. She told me there's a pandemic coming, and she called it from watching the news. And that she was my news person. She watched all the news all around the world every day, and she would tell me what I need to know. And then January, February, March came for spring break, and we did not return to spring break here. And then I never forget, in June, I found myself in the house, and I just was going through. So that's when I really began to grieve. Because between the time she passed in March, I was still taking care of little business pieces, closing out accounts and things of that nature. But I did want to address what you said, Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
Out of everything that has happened, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun. After everything that has taken place, from being Mama's oldest daughter to being Mama's caregiver to being your sister, um, I I believe that that's how God planned for it to be, for me to be there. Because some of those conversations that Mom had, as we were talking earlier, I was waiting to share this, freed her up and gave me some freedom in some areas as well. Because we were able to share some things. I was able to remind her of some things that I thought of or that I experienced as a child. And she would say, I didn't know you remember that, you recall that. So I was able to get some things off my chest. She was able to get some things off her chest. And even we talked about some of the things that had taken place while I was her caregiver. So my revelation, and this revelation only came to me about a year or so ago. I was the one who was supposed to be there.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah.
Because it gave us the time to spend that time together. And I also taught her how to take little wine shots at night.
Yeah, child. Terry had my mama drinking, y'all.
And she looked forward to her little drink, baby. She had a specific, and Mama didn't want a shot anymore. She wanted a glass. I said, no, girl. Mm-mm. But my doctor said I can have a little red at night. I said, I know it. But yeah, my mama, she slept so well when she had her little wine shot every night, baby.
I
It
know
wasn't
she.
every night. It was a couple of nights a week I would give it to her. And there was some times that I didn't give it, that she asked for it. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it was. I know that you have to process through whatever you need to process through,
Mm-hmm.
and but I just want to share that that was a revelation that came from me, and as I was going through my grief. Even last year, this time when it came to me, I wept. I had smiles on my face, but I still wept because I
Yeah.
miss her so much. You know what I mean? I miss her so much, but it kind of gave me I don't know whether it's joy, peace. It gave me something. I don't know. But anyway, I can say right now it is well with my soul because,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm grateful because, yes, I would say definitely you and I are much closer. We are the closest we've ever been
exactly.
now. And just
Mhm.
in case you guys want to know, my sister is 10 and a half years my senior. I know for those of you who are looking at the video on YouTube, you can see how fine my sister is. And she don't look a day over 40. But yes, she is 10 and a half years my senior. And I am grateful. Again, we've had this conversation offline, and I have,
Mhm.
apologized profusely,
Yes.
to my sister for not being as physically present,
Yes.
as I should have been, but these are things you definitely have to talk about as a family. But from what I have witnessed personally and from what I've observed in other families, typically there is a golden child. There,
Oh,
no, I mean, or a golden person
okay.
that pretty much will sustain the majority of the responsibility, and that's regardless of the number of siblings that are present. Norma, you can have 10 siblings, and more than likely it's going to be one, no more than two, that may step up. And we saw that with grandma.
Oh, yes.
You know, and who was it that stepped in? Our mother,
mama,
and you.
and me. Yep.
Well, she was the only sibling that was really there when it came to, looking after, grandmother when she got to those latter years of her life. And, that sister was teed off at you and mama for putting her in the nursing home.
She sure was.
You almost burned the house down trying to fry chicken.
She said it was her house. She didn't care. Yeah, she was the first power of attorney that I had to have done. And she didn't want to sign it, but she signed it. And she was angry. She tried to hit me too. My grandmother.
Sure. Well, we already know.
We understood.
We already know grandma fight. That's a whole nother episode.
Episode right there. All my life I had to fight.
Literally. We have to have a whole nother episode on Sarah Hayes, y'all.
Sarah have mud. Yes, ma'am. Sarah.
And we are her offspring. So what they tell you?
That's right. What fruit don't fall far.
Mess around and find out if you want to.
Okay. Ooh, okay now.
Listen, okay, we are going to wrap this up because there's a part 2 coming because we haven't even begun. Well, we've scratched the surface, but there is a lot more information that we want to share with y'all. But to wrap this part 1 up, when talking about family support or just support in general, 2 things I want to touch on before we go. Number 1, how do you handle family members who say they'll help, but they don't?
Once you process the disappointment, being a child of God, having accepted Christ in my life, the Bible tells you to be angry, but sin not. So for me, it was a lot of disappointment and hurt. And once I process through that, I just began to deal with those people in that manner. I mean, I didn't call on them anymore. I didn't depend on them anymore. And I asked God to not let me harbor any hate, anger, anything that was not of Him in my heart. And I had to pray that prayer many, many times. Many times. I really did. So that's how I handled it. And then, once it was over, it was over. I mean, you create boundaries. You draw lines in the sand. You know what I mean? But they're my family. I love them. But there are some boundaries that you still have.
Okay. Lastly, what do people misunderstand about the role of the one who shows up?
What do people misunderstand about the roles? That sometimes, for me, I can speak about me, sometimes people misunderstand the smile that's on my face.
Wow.
They don't see the hurt in my heart. And I have learned to wear that well. That's one good thing.
That's good, sis. That is so good.
I've learned to facade, and I cry in silence. Everything is not a conversation. But yeah, that's I think for me that encompasses a lot. That smile and then that pain inside encompasses a lot. Yeah. So we can break that apart some other time, but yeah.
Yes, and I think that is the perfect place for us to put a semicolon
Okay.
in this conversation, because that lets you know that there is a lot more to come. I hope and pray that you guys have grabbed, some of these tidbits and the vulnerability that Terry and I have shared in the midst of this conversation. And just think, if this is part one, you can't even imagine what's coming in part two. So, Powder Room family, please make sure to join us next week, where we will continue this conversation on caregiving and aging parents. As always, thank you so much for joining us this week. You can follow me, reach out on Facebook at the Powder Room Podcast, also on TikTok and Instagram at thepowderroom.pod. Be blessed and most encouraged. Tell the people goodbye for now, sister.
Bye, and thank you. See you next time.